It's the 18th. It's October 18th, 2014. I have a difficult story to tell, and I thought I'd get some footage and see uh, what I can do with that. I have to work my way into a comfort zone in talking about this. I'm from Santa Fe, New Mexico. I lived there for 12 years, and I had a good life there. Uh, I worked my way to having my own gallery and house, and I think that's where I'll begin. I was just about to get a house, and I am adjusting the film here, so everything is like one take. Um, we'll get it right. I was just about to get a house, and first of all, I want to say that I've never been arrested. I've never had trouble with the law. I'm a teacher. I've always been just and an artist, so I'm very much a recluse where I'm just always doing my work or going to see art and working hard. And I just never had any problems with anyone. And this marks when I was living in this house on Camino Carlos Rey in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I was doing a rental, and the time was about up for me to leave there. And Barack Obama was campaigning for the first time for president. And there's a long story about Barack Obama and me. And it goes back to the time where I lived in Chicago. And ever since 9/11, when he had that big speech, and then there was an anti-war protest, I was going to the museum that day. I stopped at the protest before I hopped on the train and heard who he was and got to know who he was, and I was impressed, and now I thought that was that. And as hindsight is 2020, but as I look back, I was followed then, and I was sought after then, and I just didn't know it.
By who?
The Barack Obama campaign people, Democratic Party. So we're going to skip to, and I moved to New Mexico at this time. It was after 9/11. I had lived there a year before 9/11 happened. I went home. 9/11 happened in Chicago when I was there. And then it was a year later, it was time to go back to Santa Fe, New Mexico. So I went back, and it was in 2007 where I had a life with Michael. We had a relationship from 2003. And I had learned at that time that there was an alcohol problem and that we had to live separately. So we lived a few blocks away from each other. And we did try living with each other once, and there was a lot of abuse. And in fact, as soon as I saw him looking up on Google the date rape drug, I decided to leave his house and find my own place. So I rented a house at that time. This is 2007, so it brings me to the beginning where I started. And one day, and this is just any day, it was around 2007 because I was living in the Camino Carlos Rey house. I pulled out of my driveway, did some errands, and I went back, and as I was heading toward my driveway, my phone rang. And I answered it real quick, and it was a wrong number. And at that point, the police were right there to arrest me for answering my telephone. And this was right in front of my house. But it was a harassment thing. I never experienced anything from the police like that before. I had never been stopped before. But they asked me to put my hands on behind the windshield, and they did this. They really roughed me up for answering your cell phone. And as I look back in hindsight, I think that it was them doing it and targeting me because it was just an awfully big coincidence that a policeman was right there next to my house, and they answered the phone, and then they said that I had written a bad check to Target. And I just want to note here that at this time, the Target becomes a symbol for Michelle Obama that she uses often with me and doing targeted things to me. Uh, I'm just noting that, and you'll see later in the story uh, uh, what happened here. So anyway, so I paid the check, and they put me in jail for such a thing, and I thought that that was very odd uh, for a telephone, answering a telephone. And I had never been in jail, and it was the most nerve-wracking thing I had ever been through, and abusive. And it was interesting the way the policeman acted. He was one personality, and suddenly there was this shift, like another personality took over. And that's also a theme or a strand that gets repeated over and over. At this time, I started receiving people coming and campaigning for Barack Obama every single day, knocking at my door, looking in my window, talking to me, having an unnecessary conversation. And the fact is, I had pretty much heard what they had to say, but the kids, they were so enthusiastic, I just decided, let them do their campaign. You know how obsessive people were about trying to get him elected. So I just, cheered along. I was a Hillary Clinton fan at the time, and I was hoping that she would win the election. But anyway, I started noticing a lot of odd things. My Michael's ex, whose name is Kimberly, she started following me, and she works for Los Alamos National Lab and has federal connections. Um, so it was somewhere in the back of my mind that that could be, it was very odd that she was following me. So we go on, and I did notice that my house was broken and entered, and I thought to myself, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not sure of this, but it really feels that way. My house, it just, being a psychic, and I work as a psychic professionally for over 30 years, helping people, I just felt something had been in the house and something was rearranged. And I was feeling myself to be very tense, and a lot of phone calls at the time, a lot of people calling to ask if they could loan me money, just odd things like that. Um, so a little time goes by, and I move into my house. And I thought it was very odd that an artist and a teacher with very little credit, that the landlord said, I can tell your character is good, and I want you to try this rent with an option in this new artist community that we're building. And there was this big statue out in front of the artist community, and I got very excited. It was a Spanish style house. It was just everything I ever wanted. There was a studio, there was a back area, there was a built-in garage, and it was accessible. And this was right before the housing crash. So it was accessible to me, and that's unusual too. And the way the landlord acted, he was just very, very, almost too friendly. When I moved in, there were 5 books sitting on the counter that it looked like they were a coded message, something staged, and also a painting of this man, an Indian, sitting in front of a store, an outdoor store with a big black hat on, like, this is your entrance or something. It just felt funny. It was a negative feel to the painting. So I move in, and time goes by. The Barack Obama election happened, and right when he won, I thought it was very odd. Well, there was no other things with the police. Everything was fine. Life was good. Um, right after the election, no, it was before the election, because No, it was after the election, but it was around that time I was asked to do a psychic reading party for New Year's. And it was an interracial couple. I thought nothing of it at the time. They had quite a large house in the neighborhood that really shrank my house. Just as it was, they were quite well to do. And I was saying that I had been over the Hillary thing. And I said I became happy that we suddenly had a black president. And I thought I was thinking into my past in my age, that it was somewhat of a miracle, and that it was just a real positive vibe going on, and everybody was like, "Wow, there's really going to be a change and all positivity." But at that time, I did go to the New Year's party, and I read for everyone and some strange people who came to see me, but I didn't think much of it. Uh, I don't like to think negative things of people, but in hindsight, I'm seeing that there's connections. Um, when I got out of the reading, someone knocked at the door very abruptly and said, "Michael's laying on the floor." And he was knocked out from drinking too much. But that didn't seem likely to me, because Michael is a type that could drink 3 bottles of anything and still be walking straight. He didn't show it, and he could drink a lot before he would go under the table. So that I didn't see that was happening. But anyway, I took Michael to the emergency room, and we spent all New Year's Day in it. He had really strange behavior at that time, and he took one of the garbage cans and broke through his picture window because I wasn't there on time with the key. Things like that he was doing. It was strange. It was a strange relationship by this time. Anyway, I was living in my house, and I gained enough footing to get a gallery, and Michael financed it, so it was a big trust issue, and we had a good business going on of stretching canvases, and that took a lot to get that going. And the house and everything, it was a lot, but I had been in the house 5 years by this time, 4 or 5 years. And there were little incidents happening during that time, such as animal control coming over, just authoritarian things, and dog park things, where my peers were suddenly acting funny, my dog. And animal control would come over with these really strange personalities and overly harsh. And I took photographs of them sitting in front of my house like they were planning something. And then when Barack Obama was giving speeches, suddenly I started hearing a double layer of speaking and mentioning a dog park and mentioning animal control, and just these weird things that I thought, am I crazy here? I'm just not going to think anything of it, but I made a mental note of it. Okay. Um, it should be noted that the Democratic Party has done things to me in the past, following me, and we had Governor Richardson as a governor, and I always felt like I was being followed and under surveillance. And when you don't do anything wrong, and you're an artist, and you're hardly in, you know, even in the street, or go to a shopping mall, that's an event. Um, I just didn't want to think anything of it, I suppose. But I was getting ulterior messages, I was getting mail, and it became increasingly threatening. And by this time, I know that Barack Obama doesn't mean well for me, and that I am being followed by the Brotherhood, and there are things going on. Now, Santa Fe is a Hispanic city, and there aren't too many African Americans in Santa Fe. So I made note of that the following things. And I always remembered the way Michael was lying on the floor on New Year's.
I
and
see.
that something had happened and that we were being targeted. And again, the name Target and Target, I would always get messages on my email from Target, and they began to be associated with activity of Michelle Obama, and it was very clear to me. And I was writing these things down in my journals, things that I was writing about, especially in his speeches. I would suddenly see in Barack Obama's speeches, and I was being harassed and followed, and my computer was broken into on several occasions. Okay,
How
those,
did you know that?
huh?
How did you know your computer had been
You know
broken
when you're
into?
hacked because things were rearranged and they made themselves known that I was hacked.
Mhm.
Um, okay, all of these things happen, and there aren't any important details in it until there were little harassments, little things with police. I was just noticing an unfriendly city happening right in front of my eyes, a place where I was very much loved and had a good life and so forth, and part of an artist community. Suddenly, the statue was taken away in front that said artist community, and then there was suddenly no water to water any of the gardens that they put up, and people began foreclosing on their houses, and Oshara Village, which was called, went bankrupt. And I began to be nervous because I had a rent with an option going on, and I was just approaching $60,000 that I had put into the house that was mine. And I saw it as a savings account to do whatever, to either buy the house or whatever I was doing, but I thought it was good. But at this time, the landlord, who I had always been on friendly terms, during this time, his wife, and this is during the 5 years, his wife, who was an artist and uh, was starting a gallery, called me, and she wanted me to be in her gallery. And I told her the reasons why I didn't want to be in her gallery. It was just too small, and my work is large. And I just felt that it would break the confidentiality arrangement that you have with a landlord being in a gallery. It just felt too big brother to me to be part of their gallery. And she was also donating money to Haiti, and it all felt very shifty to me. I didn't want to buy into it. And it was a buying in proposal. And at the time, I said, I'm in the midst of opening up my own gallery. So I had said no to that. But Dan began to act funny to me, asking me to go to different openings and just very casually telling me, oh, there's this one opening today and that one. And I didn't realize that there were big wigs in the art community because it's not something that I pay attention to. I pay attention to my work, and that's what artists should do. So anyway, time goes on. The gallery is just starting. Things are looking really good.
Mhm.
Michael was busy on this project of doing his own film, so he wasn't. Usually, if he's bored, he starts getting abusive, but I was really glad he was very busy. The best thing to do was to keep him busy, and we would have no problems. So that was happening. And then it was summertime, first summer of the gallery, and I came home one day, and my sliding door was broken and broken into, but there was nothing missing in the house.
That's unnerving.
Nothing. It was a little unnerving. I said, well, maybe one of the dogs broke the door. Heather's always breaking things. I really thought that, oh, we'll have to get that fixed. And I really didn't think, because I didn't see anything missing, and I didn't feel that anyone had been in the house. Okay, Michael is done with his film and he starts getting abusive, of course. And it's right where I'm trying to show my work. But what happened was I woke up one morning and I wasn't wearing my clothes that I went to sleep with, and I was drugged and sexually attacked in my home. I immediately called the police, and Jim Becker, who lived across the alley, was there. And I learned in hindsight that he was one of the people that was working for Dan, who was the landlord. They were very connected with each other. And he always pretended he was enemies with Dan. Uh, right away, when I first moved in, he made sure he let me know that they weren't friends, which was, you don't say these things to a reader and me not think, okay, put that on the back burner. And the back burner was getting really big, but I wasn't sure what to do with it. So when I woke up this way, I knew I had been attacked. My dogs were acting strange. My camera equipment was facing my computer, like, we're going to put this on the computer, what you did. And there was this big stalk of marijuana, and I would never have such a stalk because it's too expensive. But there was this huge stalk of the most beautiful marijuana, like, here's a gift for you. And I'm in space. I'm in space like I've been drugged, and I said to, I've been all over psychically. So if I took a great amount of LSD, it wouldn't affect me that much. I would say I'm being drugged. I would know it because I've done mushrooms, and I've been too far, and I know my way in those realms. So I knew I had been drugged right away. You don't wake up like that, and I was like hallucinating. And I was saying to myself, that's a hallucination. I would see this face on the wall, and a voice began to talk to me that was Kimberly's. And by the way, at this time, she was stalking me quite a bit of times, and I photographed her. So that's what I do when I see people stalking me or doing anything. It was like gathering evidence. I started taking pictures, and I made a work of art out of it, as I do everything. So what else can you do? Um, so Jim Becker starts teasing me with my keys, and knowing like I was drugged because he was acting in a certain way that would indicate I was the one that drugged you. Like he wouldn't have treated me on a normal day that way. He'd say, "Oh, you want me to help you take out the garbage cans? Good neighbor Sam." And his 3 daughters. One of his daughters is on the police force. Okay. I was really nervous. I was drugged. And I took my car and went to the corner, got a pack of cigarettes, tried to decide what I was going to do. Stood in the house for a while, gathering evidence. And my iPhone was stolen. Not during the break-in, but when I was on my way to go get a pack of cigarettes and go home, I came home and suddenly the phone wasn't there. Okay. Jim's acting really strange and sort of speaking in tongues to me. And there was an interracial couple, not the same one with the tarot party, but they were in my house at my tarot decks. And I said, "What are you doing in here?" And then they disappeared. So it was almost as if everybody knew I was being drugged, because it was hallucinatory. It was totally hallucinatory. And I made note of it. I said, "This is hallucinatory. There's something very, very wrong going on. And look at how I woke up, and look at this." So I decided to call the police, which was a mistake. 8 police officers, male, and 1 female. So it was 7 males and 1 female come into my house and start acting like I'm crazy for reporting this. And Jim's daughter, the policeman, was acting really funny to me and authoritarian and bossy. And they grabbed me by the arms and they put me in an ambulance and took me to the hospital. And I screamed. I know the old adage that if you scream, everyone will know where you are. Well, right as they were, so we had spent a little time in the house, and then they grabbed me like that. And I was in a state of shock. So I said, and there was, as I was on my way to the hospital, I was hearing Kimberly's voice saying to me, "You're not going to say anything about this to anybody or we're going to kill you." And so I know that there was some witchcraft going on, and I know that Kimberly belonged to a coven, and I know that there was a tarot conference in where a few famous people came to this conference, and suddenly afterwards there was a whole bunch of crime, and I knew Kimberly was involved with this group. That was just something I knew from being a seer and how interested she was in me. She was just way too interested in her ex's gal, you know. So I knew something was wrong there. But I pay attention to such things, and I wrote a letter to the governor, and I said, this tarot conference is going to bring people here that are not good for the people of Santa Fe. They were just real criminal. There were criminal things going on. You know, in Santa Fe was a place that was safe. That you don't, once in a month you hear about a murder, whereas in a big city you hear, there's much more. All of a sudden, it started. All those things started to happen at that time, and so I knew Kimberly was involved with those people. And the fact that I was hearing her voice made me realize that that's a parlor trick to me. That's nothing, that's, but people can do that. So I don't see that as anything shocking, like, oh, I'm hearing voices. I know a heard voice from a drug voice from someone who's projecting a voice on you. It's an old parlor trick, and it doesn't take much to do that. Especially if you are planning something with a circle of people. It's not hard to do that. Anyway, Dan started to have timing with me, and the very next day after the incident and the home invasion. Oh, by the way, I left the emergency room because they were making me wait, and seemed like everybody knew about it, and that they had already contacted the hospital to make me wait and get me agitated. But it was 2 hours, and it's like, okay, I'm not going to say anything more. I'm just going to get my stuff and leave. And I walked home, which was like 10 miles. And as I was walking home, Kimberly was following me in her car this time, not just her voice. She was following me. And she did for the rest of the time I lived in Santa Fe. And she had the license plate number, a new license plate number. First of all, she had the identical car as Michael's, and she had the license plate number, which was the name of the famous tarot woman who came to Santa Fe. And that's why I knew that they were involved with each other. She had her name on her license plate, like, this is my new teacher kind of business. See, I know all the spiritual business and how it works. But anyway, where am I? So I walked home from this event, and I was really frustrated because I couldn't get anyone to talk to me. And I had left my keys somewhere in the emergency room. They got lost or they got taken by the emergency room. So I had to hop over the fence, and my dogs were inside the fence. The next morning, first thing in the morning, Dan calls and says that my contract's up and I've lost the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, gee, what wonderful timing you have. And then I started looking back into my living in this house for 5 years and how he was always very timely. I had bought a new set of keys for my house. Got all the locks retooled. And suddenly Dan walks in through the gate and has a key. So where in the hell did you get that key? Is what I said to myself. I also found a paper clip, and like they had broken into the house. It was next to the doorway, just in my gathering of evidence. So that next day, when Dan told me that I had lost the house through this legal, that, and this and that, there was a lot going on. Osharab Village had been sold, and all this. Um, I started seeing him as not a friend anymore. I started seeing him as, are you in on this too? And Michael seemed to be in on it. And the Star Electronics, who was next door to my studio, suddenly said that my lease was up at the studio. And so it was like all the walls were caving in at once. And then I smell in my car, in my dashboard, there's some sort of a powdery substance. And every time I start cleaning in my house, I start hallucinating. So I was convinced that it was a drug and that they'd sprinkled it on my pillow and sprinkled it on my car. So I would be going nuts because they couldn't drive me nuts. They had to manufacture and simulate that. But anyway, throughout this time, Barack Obama's speeches were loaded full of triggers, and so was mail, and it was right before the second election. And I always know that before an election, I always get harassed a lot by my own party. I've been a lifelong Democrat, but I always get these harassing things and using things in sexual overtones and a using that they were doing to me, and it wasn't okay. And time finally came, and the police arrived at my door. Oh, I was also threatened many times that I never could speak about what happened to me in my house. And I started writing about it. So I guess that they saw nothing better than they could do. What better thing that they could do is take all my writing and all my things away from me. So one day the police show up at my house and say, you have 15 minutes to leave. And all of my huge library, they were recording me at the time like a joke. You know, that they had cameras there and they were recording my books and all the things that they were going to be taking. And they wouldn't let me on the property. They locked me out of my house. And I took whatever things I could in that 15 minutes. Oh, and by the way, that January, after the election and after the home invasion, my dog Hathor was poisoned. Yes, there's proof. And the very next day, Barack Obama got his new dog, and he made sure he made a big deal about that. And Dan got his new German Shepherd. The very next day, on January 1st, after Hathor was poisoned, they come to me, we just got a new dog. And then I hear Barack saying about that's how that stuff was following me, that this brotherhood was following me. Anyway, I went back in time a little bit. There's a lot of details, and again, hindsight is 2020. But it was before the election where all these things happened, and then after the election, and a year into it, that spring, I was thrown out of my house with all my things, and I had built up $60,000 on the house that was mine, so I thought he was going to obviously let me stay to get my things, since he's the one that owed me $60,000, and he could have taken
the agreement when you spent the
no,
money on it?
no, it wasn't. It wasn't. But now I know. At this point, I knew why he suddenly said, "Oh, we want you to live in this house. We want you to buy a house. You're an artist. My wife was an artist. You need to have a house." And why they wanted me to show at their gallery, and pushing in and me not caving to them. And finally they did that, and suddenly Dan has a key to my house where I had just changed all the locks. And he was like he was snooping on me and under surveillance. So I went to the dog park, which is a big hilly place in Santa Fe, and it's a beautiful place. And by the way, I say this for Santa Fe, the County of Santa Fe Police. I do this because they were really cruel and harsh to me. And I don't believe the citizens of Santa Fe deserve such treatment. So I'm hoping that I'm helping the people of Santa Fe who have been abused by the police more times than you can imagine. And it's just a whole abusive system there, worse than anything I've ever seen. But I haven't seen much. Anyway, so I was sleeping at the dog park getting ready to make my plans to go to California in my car, getting ready to go, and the police came. You're not supposed to stay here, they say, and they take me to jail. And it was for one day, but it was the worst experience I ever had. The way they handled me, the way they abused me, the way they put me in to begin with for just loitering on dog park property. I had been a person who went there every day with my dogs, and suddenly my dog is killed, and Michael is acting really strangely to me, and he started just talking in an abusive way, and Kimberly was in front of my house a number of times, and
Were they back together?
I don't know. I don't think so. But I do know that there was some cohorting going on. And the way, I mean, this was years ago, but it was about 2007 where it was whispered to me, and I recognized the whisper. It was whispered by Kimberly, Michael's going to have a heart attack. And he did. So it was like, who's doing this? What is going on? So it made me suspicious way back then where Kimberly was with this, who my landlord actually was. And then I learned that my landlord has contacts with a lot of the people I know in New York and in California, and that all of this was happening in plain sight, and I became a victim, a real victim, on levels that I'm just beginning to see. And I want to take this to the police and make a case out of it. I believe that I have a case, and all along this time I was sending things to the news, ABC News. I was writing things in my computer. I was taking notes. And then they said that my work and my whole body of work, which is my library and all my lectures, all my papers, my books, my written books, my photographs, my family stuff, was taken to an undisclosed location, and they will not let me know where it is. So that's one story. It's a big story. There's a lot of details in it. I remember everything like it was yesterday.
When you asked them to return it, what did they say?
We're going to call the police if you harass me anymore, is what they said when that. It was like they did a land grab and a work grab of an artist who's been working for 40 years. This is 40 years worth of work. And then the physical assault, it all just fit into place. And then, as time goes on, Barack Obama, in his speeches, starts referring to what they did to me physically. What happened to me was I was scratched. Somebody grabbed something out of my neck, and it felt like on a psychic level, on a black magic level. And they always refer to my work like to trigger something to get me upset, because it does make me upset whenever anything is said about my work now, because I don't know where it is. It's like a mother missing her chicks. I just can't deal with that. It just makes me really angry. So he started it was on a day where he signed Freedom Religion Act, where he was acting like he had a hold on me. And it's like your rapist always has a hold on you. And I knew that he had something to do with this attack. And it's no secret, Barack Obama practices black magic and is a bat. And he attacked me. And there was never any doubt about these people who attacked me were into this certain sect that victimized people on levels of magic, and the fact is they were bringing it up verbally, teasing me, and they have until now. They still do. I still get emails that s- are harassing to me and threatening to me. If I'm going to go to the police, I'm going to be threatened. And because an election is coming up, they're starting to bother me again. So I thought I would document this as a testimony, so when the election gets closer, I won't be bothered and harassed anymore, and it'll be a matter of public record, and then I'll be able to protect myself. What do you think?
What is it about your work that threatens them?
It's visionary work. It's very good.
But there must be some core thing.
I
that threatens
documented
them.
everything they did to me, or that was done. I just document
No,
my
your
life.
work. What threatens them in your work?
What threatens them about my work?
Yes, the work that you produced.
It's worth a lot. It's very meticulous, deep, visionary work, and it's highly sought after. And I'm not a
But there's
I
something.
haven't been a public person or a seller. I always was focused on doing a really great body of work, and I wasn't focused on being famous or um, selling it, because I always made my money through teaching and being a nurse. That was my other profession. That was my first profession when I was 17. Um, and then after art school, I also was receiving. See, the Art Institute of Chicago was connected to Barack Obama, of course. It's the whole Chicago gang. And I noticed that every time I would get an alumni message from my alma mater, which is the Art Institute of Chicago, School of the Art Institute of Chicago, every single time I would receive mail from there, it would have Barack Obama's name on it. And I thought, that is really weird. Why? So I know that they had a lot to do with getting him nominated for president. He started there. I think his footsteps start there. And that's where I began to be followed, because I was very active in going to the school and being part of that community at one time. What other questions?
Your vision. One
Well,
of your visions triggered this. Do you know which one it is?
yeah. It's my vision. I can do lawsuits with what's been done to me in this lifetime. I can do lawsuits after lawsuit until the day is done. Or I could have a vision, which is to have a fourth branch of government for the Constitution in arts and sciences, and that's what is badly needed. And I've been doing research on that for many years, and I hope that's my contribution to having a real democracy. And I'm a humanities professor. That might help with me and University of California, Santa Barbara. I want to work there and get my thesis completed there and teach, or be a visiting artist to several places and talk about what I want to do.
And you think it's safe there
Safe where?
at University?
Santa Barbara?
California, yes.
No, I don't think any place is safe right now. Not when you have a president following you and breaking your computer and breaking your windshield, and all these things happen to me, and being followed by black males. I hate saying that because it intonates racism, which is so much not me. But there's a pattern here, and that's become very clear to me. And that he's been doing things and butting in on my personal life has a lot to do with Edward Snowden and what happened there. And Edward Snowden is a national hero, and one day it will be seen, because the surveillance they have put on me in my life is totally uncalled for. I'm a good citizen, yet I don't have any citizens' rights or human rights. And if you can walk into a house, someone's house, and sexually assault them and get away with it because you're president, then we don't have a democracy. So there I'm going to start my thesis. There's where my thesis begins. We need to have a real democracy, and we don't have one, and the world's in shambles. And since Barack Obama took office, we might have a good economy getting better, but real people don't benefit from it. And stop it, Louie. Not only that, um, we live in a surveillance state where policemen can do anything they want to anyone, and there are no repercussions. And what I saw that one day spent in jail of my lifetime was probably a blessing, because now I know what that looks like and how there's regulars who come in there and it's just, it's a complete farce. And the county of Santa Fe erased all the records, so there is no record of me calling the police and of them coming to my house with 8 policemen. There's no record of it. The emergency room, they got it because I took the documents from the emergency room and the ambulance, so we got that. But that's but all the news I kept writing to different people so they would, so I'd have proof. And I wrote tweets at the time, so it's all out in the open and right in front of everyone's eyes that these crimes are being committed. Oh, there's a Great Pyrenees. Look, Louie. That's such a sad story about my dog, and that hurt the most. That was rough. It was antifreeze they put in the yard. He walked in and started spitting up, and then she sat down. She knocked over my iPad onto the floor, and then just sat down. And then I woke up that morning, and she was dead. Nothing wrong with her. No health problems. Nothing.
And that's
Perfect
something
health.
that you never kept around the place.
Nothing I ever. That was at the studio. Nothing.
Mhm.
And they were in that yard every day. I think it's good. Okay, you're going to be a good boy? Okay. More questions?
What is it about your work that exposes this?
My work isn't about them. I never wanted to spend time on drawing a picture of evil. Everyone knows what that is. I'm about form, I'm about music, I'm about a higher form of democracy. I used to teach Greek art and Greek culture and literature, and then I taught Mesopotamia to pre-Renaissance, so that era of history I did over and over again, and mythology. So while I was doing that, and I would have students invent a pantheon, for example, and they would have to do it in 3 dimensions. And so I would get students' ideas of, young people's ideas of, what would a real democracy be? What does it mean? What is God? Asking these very deep questions, but in a way that people could participate and explain their ideas. So I did that for 10 years teaching. So I had all these papers that I would go over, and I created my vision a lot about the responses I got in my mythology course for build your own pantheon. And this was before they studied Egypt and before they studied Greece. I'd have them do it to find out, before they would do that material, what was really in them. And they would have the goddess of the jails, the goddess of this, they created these pantheons, and it really inspired me, and I inspired them. So that's really where the idea was seated when I was first teaching.
You told me a story about teaching the police to make graffiti.
Oh, yeah. When I was teaching that humanities class, it was a community college, so I had a lot of police officers. And I would do personalized projects for the final project, where they'd have to come and see me, and we would talk about what they were going to do for their final project. And I always thought that when I saw policemen or nurses, I would say, gee, this is the last and first and last humanities they'll ever get. What could I do to be relevant? So I would have policemen go out and do reports on graffiti, the history of graffiti, and what's graffiti saying, and doing social projects like that that would make them more aware and more human in their approach with people. So that was part of my teaching way back when, before I moved to Santa Fe.
Which sounds like it needs it.
Huh?
Which sounds as if it needs it.
It sounds like what needs what? I didn't
It
get it.
sounds as if they need it.
Oh, the police.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And okay, that was 10 years ago. The world has gotten so bad since then, and the police, and just the lack of civility, and the loss of a moral compass. And I'm not this person who stands on a platform, a pedestal, and lectures about morality. I'm not that way or judgmental. But at the same time, the ideas that I have from teaching the humanities could greatly improve and create a democracy. So that's just always part of my research and what I learned in this lifetime. And why I've been followed and harassed and treated so badly and losing a house, and they seem to feed off me. They said if I'm going to say anything, I'm not going to be able to get a house in Santa Barbara, and they have actually not let me get into the school or do anything until they say so, or maybe never, because they know everything that I do every day, every minute. I never have a moment that they don't know about. It's complete surveillance. And I've never done anything wrong or broken any law, or in fact, I'm quite the opposite of that, you know.
But you did challenge them.
I challenge too.
You challenged them with your theory of democracy.
I challenge them with, no, I've never spoken about it out loud. It's mainly in my writing. But if they stole it and now they're using it for their speeches, that's not very nice. So, fine. I love cooperative projects. I love collaborations. The more artists, the better. Let's do something the world has never seen. Let's do something, an eighth wonder of the world. So their selfishness in the way that they're treating me and treating me like a prisoner, and that they're not going to let me work here, and I have to live in LA, and we have to go show your work in LA. That's a crock. I don't want to. I want to do it in Santa Barbara, and I'm used to small cities. I'm originally from Chicago, which is a huge city to be an artist in and to come up in. And it's like, you know what? I completed that part of my life. And I want small. And not small, but just, I want to show in LA. But that's, the fact that you are telling me where I have to show or not show is bothering me.
How are they telling you now?
I have had, I get informed of those things, put it that way. And that I have to live with Mel in LA, and I can't get a place in Santa Barbara. And this is about mafias, and that was my other story. It's not something I really want to go into, or that I get joy or don't get my rocks off on talking about that kind of thing. But when the shoe fits, wear it. That's what's going on, and I'm being harassed, and I should be able to go move wherever I'd like, and I should be able to go to the university and do fulfill my goals in this lifetime, and they're great obstacles. So, questions?
They keep plugging along.
Keep plugging along. Now you see why it was important to speak this story.
Yeah.
And it's before an election, and I'm still, all the harassment starts coming in, and the imprisoning me, making me feel imprisoned. For example, in LA on July 4th, they had the Neighborhood Watch Patrol, which is a Brotherhood guy, sitting in his car in front of my house. And Mel never ordered that service. They had no right to be sitting in front of our house on 4th of July, but they did that to drill that in, that feeling like I'm imprisoned and I'm under surveillance. I also had a drone come up to me when I was walking. It's been offered to me to, do I want to be a drug user? And I don't want to have anything to do with it or delivering that. I'm just not into it. But this is what this administration is, and everyone should know for real that Barack Obama is not a good guy. And there's a lot of, I think he's harming his own people more, and the United States in a great way. And it's about the moral compass. It's about what's happened here. It's about surveillance. It's about corporations. It's about the Koch brothers. It's about a lot of these things that I've had a view of these days after being harassed and told, you're not going to tell anybody about this. And the fact that you said that makes me want to talk about it more. And the fact is, getting attacked in your house, that's really crossing the line. You can do a lot of things. You can arrest me for tickets or whatever, but when you break and enter someone's house when they're sleeping and you kill their pets and all of these things that have happened, it's just a litany and a list. And I've been a good citizen all my life, and suddenly these things happen when Barack Obama decided to become president. I think this needs to be told. The end. Thank you for listening. Thank you for helping me.